There are three things that separate us as a species from everything else on the planet and make us superior. Number one is the fact that we have opposable thumbs. Number two is that we have predator eyesight. And number three is our ability to communicate. So think about that for a second. One third of the things that make us superior and powerful in relation to everything else on the planet is our ability to communicate, and yet so many people struggle with communication. So think about that for a second. Here we are with this superpower, this God-given superpower that we have, and most of us don't even know what to do with it. And one of the areas that many people struggle with, including myself, is starting conversations. Just think about that. One of the things that we struggle with the most is the ability to just walk over to somebody else and start talking to them. Like I said, I am not immune to this. I sometimes struggle when it comes to starting conversations because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to feel embarrassed. I don't want to feel vulnerable. I don't want to look stupid. But I do it anyway. And I do it using very specific techniques that I want to share with you in today's video. So if you struggle with starting conversations with other people, then sit down and stay tuned, because in this video, I'm going to give you 10 different ways to open up a conversation. So first and foremost, let me say this. If you learn nothing else, if you take one thing away from this video, it's the ability to ask open-ended questions. So like I said, I'm going to share with you 10 techniques in this video. Some of them are related to questions, but let's just say you didn't want to learn 10 techniques. You want to learn one technique. The technique I would tell you to learn is to understand how to ask open-ended questions. So what are open-ended questions? Open-ended questions are questions that you ask that require, typically, from a sane, reasonable person, a response besides a yes or a no. So the key to asking these types of questions is to use words like what, how, why, or tell me about that. Because when you use these words in your questions, it almost forces the other person to have to elaborate when they give you the answer. As opposed to saying, do you like that? Where they can just respond with a yes or a no. Now, I could tell you, like I said, for me, the ability to ask really good questions has become the most important tool that I keep in my arsenal when it comes to communication, because it just works in so many different settings. You can use it in professional settings. You can use it when you're marketing to other people. You can use it if you're on a date and you hit one of those awkward silent moments. If you have an arsenal of open-ended questions that you can fire off at any given moment, it's almost guaranteed to ignite a conversation. Again, unless the other person is being super closed off, they're unreasonable, and they don't want anything to do with you, then open-ended questions probably won't work. Nothing might work at that point, but assuming you're talking to a reasonable person and the context, environment, and circumstances justify it, asking open-ended questions will typically ignite the conversation. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's jump into the 10 specific techniques that you could start using today to open up conversations. The first is to comment on the setting or the environment. So you might say something like, hey, this place is really nice. Have you been here before? Or if you're at an event where people are speaking, you might say something like, hey, that last guy who spoke was really good, don't you think? So the key here is you want to identify something in the environment that the other person is either going to agree with or they are going to see as true. So, for example, if you are in a room that is very well lit and the lights are very bright, you might say something like, hey, it's really bright in here, right? You would not say something like that if it was dark in the room, right? Because what that would do is kind of create some friction where the person would be like, what? Like, I can't even see in here because it's like the lights are so bright, they're like blinding me. So you want to be careful with what you pick because reality can be subjective. But as long as you pick something that's pretty much universally understood to be true and talk about that observation, it's going to get the other person to agree with you and start opening up and responding to you. The next thing you could do is ask for an opinion. The reality is people love to hear themselves talk, and there is a fundamental desire in all of us to want to be accepted, understood, and appreciated. And when you ask someone for their opinion, you tick all those boxes. You make them feel like you want to understand them. You make them feel like you appreciate them. And you make them feel like their opinion, their thoughts, their values, their outlooks, their beliefs are valued by you. Asking somebody for their opinion really puts them in a position where you're almost indirectly complimenting them, because just the fact that you're asking them for their opinion lets them know that you value their opinion. And again, because people love to hear themselves talk and they want to be accepted and they want to feel valued and they want to feel understood, in most cases, they're going to take that opportunity to actually give you their opinion on the topic. They're going to want to share that insight with you. The next thing you could do is compliment and then pivot. So here's the thing about compliments. There is nothing worse than a fake compliment. So it is absolutely super cringe to give somebody a compliment or pay somebody a compliment when you really don't mean what you're saying. And in most cases, the person is going to pick up on the fact that you're just kissing up to them and that you have an ulterior motive for complimenting them. So there are two rules that I like to follow when it comes to complimenting people. Number one is this goes without saying, it has to be a genuine compliment. So I'm going to observe that person and I'm going to look for something that they're either wearing or something that I know about them as a person, and I'm going to try to find something that I genuinely feel good about, like something that I genuinely admire about that person. It could be that they have a really nice watch. It could be that their shoes are really nice. It could be that the car that they drive is really nice. It could be that they have a reputation for doing something and I happen to know about it and it's a good thing and I want to compliment them on that. So that's the first thing. It's got to be a genuine compliment. The second thing that I will evaluate is the status of that person as it relates to the context that we are in. Because sometimes paying somebody a compliment too early, depending on the social status, can make them look down on you. And so you don't ever want to do that because that could potentially take away your power in the communication. That's a tricky one. It's really something that you have to kind of follow intuitively. You have to just kind of like let your guard down and assess the situation and ask yourself, like, what is the status of this person in relation to me in this context? And if I paid them a compliment right now, would that improve my status or would it reduce my status in this situation? In most cases, you don't want to reduce your status. Now, there is a time and a place where you can reduce your status in relation to the other person, but it has to be like a long-term play. And I can shoot a whole different video about status. That's another video, another conversation. But in most cases, you don't want to lower your status. So you want to think about how will this compliment that I'm about to pay this person affect my status in this context? As long as it doesn't negatively affect your status and it's a genuine compliment, pay them the compliment and then pivot with a question. So you might say something like, hey, that's a really nice watch. Do you collect watches? Or, hey, that's a really nice car. Are you like a car freak? Do you love cars? The next thing you can do is bring up a shared connection. So if you know that the other person is interested in something or values something that you also value, it's a great opportunity to start up a conversation about that thing. The first thing that this does is it creates commonality, but again, it gives the other person an opportunity to talk about something that they're interested in and that they value. You know, if you look hard enough, what you're going to find is that the people that feel like they are the easiest to communicate and the people that you want to be around, the people that you want to communicate with, it's not so much what those people say that makes them feel like a good communicator. It's the fact that they listen and let you speak. That's why you want to be around them. Because when you're in their company, you feel like you can truly express yourself and be yourself, and that person gives you the opportunity to do that. That's part of what makes someone a great communicator. Remember, like, you could know all the words, the terms, the phrases, all the tricks, all the tactics, but if people don't want to be around you, you're really not considered a good communicator because you don't even have the opportunity to communicate. Well, what makes people want to be around other people? It's the fact that they feel heard, listened to, understood, and appreciated. So again, when you share a commonality with that person, not only does it create a bond and make them feel similar to you, but it gives them that opportunity to start talking about the thing that they value. The next thing that you could do is bring up either the news or a current event and then ask the person their opinion on it. So the only two areas that I would say stay away from this are politics or religion, unless you know for a fact, without a shadow of a doubt, that that person shares the same outlook and opinion as you do on that topic. Because politics and religion can get very dangerous very fast. Like, you could even agree with someone for the majority of the conversation about this particular topic, and then you could say one thing that triggers them, and they're like, oh, no, I don't agree with that, and then the conversation goes south. So as a general rule, I stay away from politics or religion when I'm bringing up a current event and then asking someone's opinion on it, unless I know for a fact that their opinion is the same as mine, and it's going to open up that opportunity for us to bond with each other. The next thing that you could do is ask for advice. So this is similar to asking for someone's opinion on something, but it's actually, in my opinion, it's more powerful to ask someone for their advice, because typically the reason you're asking them for their advice is because they've been through the experience before, or they have some sort of experience as it relates to the thing that you're asking them. And so you're showing them that you value the knowledge, wisdom, and experience that they've acquired as it relates to that thing. So again, going back to that fundamental desire to feel understood, to feel valued, and to feel appreciated, asking somebody for their advice ticks all those boxes, and it gives them the opportunity to share certain insights, outlooks, beliefs, opinions with you, and you are letting them know this is an open invitation to tell me what you think, how you feel, what you would do in this situation. So that immediately is going to make that person feel valued, listened to, and understood. The next thing is to just walk over and introduce yourself casually. Now, I could tell you, this is probably the one that I've struggled with the most. Like just walking up to somebody and saying, "Hey, I'm Paul. I wanted to come over and introduce myself." And there's really no rhyme or reason for it. I guess maybe I'm imagining some scenario where the person snubs me or looks down on me or makes me feel like I was stupid for introducing myself. But what I realize is that if that person does something like that, then that's their problem, that's their issue, and I probably don't want to be around them anyway. But the reality is the majority of people are going to respond positively when you introduce yourself to them. And the more you get used to just walking up to people and introducing yourself with clarity, confidence, and conviction, the better your communication skills are going to be overall, because the majority of the issues that people have when it comes to communication is mental. It's not that they don't know what to say or how to say it or when to say it. It's that they don't have the right mental model that enables them to do that. So like if you think about, if you're a person that typically struggles with communication, I can bet that there are certain people or certain instances or certain times when you are communicating where it's not an issue. It's probably when you're communicating with a close friend, somebody that you've known for a really long time, maybe a family member, somebody that you truly feel comfortable being around, where you could just say whatever you want without the feeling of being judged. So it's that feeling of being judged. It's that feeling of saying something inappropriate. It's that feeling of being misunderstood. It's that feeling of not being accepted that is ultimately stopping you from communicating effectively. That's a thought issue. That's a mindset issue. And the only way to break through mindset stuff is through physical repetition. You can play it out in your mind a million times, but until you actually get out there and perform the actions and get the reps in, it's going to be difficult to break through that. And so as much as I do not enjoy walking up to people and randomly introducing myself, I do it because it's an exercise that I know is going to benefit me overall in the long run as it relates to my ability to communicate. Next is to mention something positive or negative. So there's an old saying that goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So if you can identify a common enemy that you and the other person have. Now, that common enemy could be anything. It could be the vibe in the place. It could be the temperature in the place. It could be the people in the place. It could be the bathrooms in the place. It could be the people that are in the environment with you. It could be something that somebody said. The point is, you want to identify something that that person is going to agree with. So, generally speaking, I go with something positive because if I don't know this person or the relationship is relatively new, I might not know what they dislike at that point. So I don't want to mention something that I think they might not like, but then they actually do, and then that creates a disconnect. So what I will generally do is look for something positive in the environment and bring that up. I will bring up the observation of something positive in the environment, and then going back to the very first thing I said about asking open-ended questions, I will say something like, what do you think about that? Again, I'm opening with the question using the word what. What do you think about that? That is an open-ended question that forces the other person to elaborate when they answer the question. Notice I didn't say, do you like it? Because that could potentially result in a yes or a no. So I'm asking them what they think about this positive thing that I've identified in the environment. The next thing that you could do is open with curiosity. So you can observe something about the other person without necessarily complimenting them on it, and then just ask them questions about that thing. So, for example, you might say something like, hey, I noticed that whenever you give a speech at the front of the room, you never ever turn your back on the audience and you never look down. is that intentionally? Do you do that intentionally, or is that just something that you do subconsciously without even realizing it, right? So again, I'm not necessarily complimenting the person. I'm not saying that I like the fact that they do that. I'm not saying that it's admirable, although it is. It's not like I'm complimenting their watch, like I showed in an earlier example. I'm not saying, hey, I noticed you have a really nice watch on. Do you collect watches? This is just simply a neutral observation about something that they are doing, something that they are wearing, or something as it relates to their identity, and then asking them to elaborate more on that thing. And then the last technique that you could use to open up a conversation, although I will say, use this one with caution, is to use humor. So the thing about humor is that when it works extremely well to shatter resistance, break down barriers, and immediately create rapport and connection with other people. But when it doesn't work, it does the exact opposite. It causes people to become more resistant, to put up more of a wall, and to view you as somebody that is different than them because they didn't get your joke. And that just feels awkward for everyone. So what I would say is use humor with caution. Like, don't just think that you can walk into any context, environment, or situation and start dropping jokes and people are going to respond positively to them, because that's a very dangerous game to be playing. But if, on the other hand, you know for a fact, or at least you're pretty confident, that they're going to find this observation or this statement that you are going to make funny, then go ahead and make that statement and use it to break the ice. Because what that's going to do is, number one, it'll get the person to laugh, it'll get them to drop their guard, and it will create some sort of a bond and rapport with that person. So what I've given you today, guys, are 10 simple ways to open up conversations. So if you struggle with conversations, you got everything you need here. I also have a book called The Code of the Master Conversationalist. I'll put a link down below in the description if you want to go check that out. And guys, if you enjoyed this video, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Give me a thumbs up because it helps the algorithm. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this.